Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today we're going to be doing a chat on brain inflammation, common causes, signs, symptoms, and ways that we can naturally address it. Before we dive in, make sure you smash that like button. Really appreciate it. Put your comment down below. Let me know your experience with brain inflammation and things that you've done that have helped you out with it. All right, so let's dive in. Brain inflammation, there's lots of ways that can happen. Obviously, there's physical trauma to the brain, car accident, sports, head injury, right? That's kind of, people know about that. Usually they're on top of that. And there's different ways to treat it. Most concussion protocols just involve keeping you up every hour, maybe some glasses, avoiding bright lights. It's not going to really be super helpful at reducing brain inflammation. It's a good way to make sure you don't have an aneurysm and such and lose consciousness, but we want to actually get to the root issue. And then we have chronic brain inflammation, whether it's from toxin exposure, food, chemical stressors, and these can play roles in creating mood issues or cognitive or brain fog or memory issues. And we want to get to the root cause of it. So, of course, with head trauma, one of the best things you can do is fasting. Fasting actually helps you activate some of the cellular autophagy. You can also do progesterone, even if you're a guy, 50 to 100 milligrams a day. Very, very helpful. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, very helpful for acute brain traumatic inflammation, right? Car accident, whack in your head. Of course, infrared light can also be used, as well as cold laser therapies on various frequencies are very anti-inflammatory. Now, for chronic inflammation, what tends to cause chronic inflammation? Food's the first thing. So things like gluten and dairy, and of course, any excitotoxins like MSG or aspartame, these things are going to cause stress to the brain. Of course, any foods that are not organic and that may have latent pesticides, mold toxins, potential heavy metals, these are always going to cause stress to the brain. We have our blood-brain barrier, which are primarily made up of astrocytes, and that's kind of the protection from the brain and the blood and toxins in the bloodstream. And so good, healthy blood-brain barrier is important. These are our astrocytes. Now, things can still slip by the blood-brain barrier, just like they slip by the gut barrier, right? We have gut permeability with a healthy gut barrier, and we have inflammation via food or bacteria or mold toxins or fungal overgrowth or infections. These things can also cause potentially leaky brain, right? The old expression is leaky gut, leaky brain. Inflammation in the gut, inflammation in the brain, because it's two-way, right? And the things that create gut permeability issues can also create brain permeability issues. So we got to look at foods. Kind of do your little checklist of all the potential food allergens that may be a problem. So that could be gluten, that could be dairy, casein. Like I mentioned, aspartame, potential heavy metals. Just by eating organic food can be super helpful. Heavy metals may be from specific pesticides that may have some trace heavy metals in it. Of course, maybe metals from mercury fillings. Silver fillings are going to be loaded with mercury. Those are kind of first steps to look at. Blood sugar, wonky blood sugar goes up and down. It's going to create all kinds of problems. The enzymes in the brain that actually play a role in helping to clean up the plaque in the brain is called insulin-degrading enzymes. So if we're consuming lots of excess carbohydrates, we're overstimulating lots of insulin via sugar and carbohydrates, that's going to take that insulin-degrading enzyme and it's going to decrease its ability to go after and clean up plaque in the brain. So high levels of blood sugar, wonky blood sugar, insulin resistance, which is a lot of Alzheimer's and dementia, is kind of known as type 3 diabetes. We know that insulin plays a major role plaquing in the brain. That's kind of a different, more chronic issue, but it starts in your 20s and 30s. You start to see symptoms in your 70s and 80s, but it starts in your 20s or 30s. So don't just think, just started overnight when your grandmother starts developing problems. It's a lifelong issue that accumulates. So you really want to be on top of it. So things that you can do to naturally reduce brain inflammation is magnesium's excellent. Neurosurgeon Russell Blaylock would comment on the fact that when he started supplementing magnesium in his neurosurgical patients, they recovered so much faster when they had magnesium. And he compared it to his colleagues that were doing similar procedures, and they just didn't quite get the same recovery time without the magnesium. So magnesium's excellent. Curcumin is excellent, especially a liposomal version. Resveratrol, excellent. Ginkgo, bacopa, acetylcholine. I mentioned curcumin, resveratrol, excellent. Ginger, excellent. These are all really good anti-inflammatory compounds. Glutathione, NAC, right? NAC for endogenous glutathione, so your body makes it, and then exogenous glutathione just to supplement what may be missing. Glutathione is a very powerful antioxidant, and so it helps with oxidative stress. So if there's oxidative stress in the brain from various toxins, that's going to be helpful. And it will also help detoxify. So if we have exposure to metals or potential toxins, it's going to help actually reduce that load. So the first thing we can do with good healthy brain health is don't put the toxins in the body that are going to affect the brain, number one. Number two, we can work on pushing and gently removing those toxins with some of those nutrients that I mentioned. And then number three, we can work on giving good anti-inflammatories to mitigate the stress from those toxins, good anti-inflammatories and good antioxidants to help support brain health. So you want to buffer the inflammation, you want to support detoxification, and then you also want to not throw more gasoline in the fire, not throw more toxins in the body. That's kind of the first step out of the gates. So we kind of looked at acute traumatic head injury stuff, a little bit different, right? Of course, all the chronic stuff's going to help too, but that's kind of on the acute side. And then on the chronic side, a little bit different because we got to look at all the foods and such. Forget who it was. There was I think maybe it was University of Oregon football team. They would actually give the team cherry juice after workouts or after practice, and I think they found the antioxidants in the cherries was I think it was the resveratrol was very anti-inflammatory in the brain. Now again, cherry juice, a lot of sugar in there. There's other ways you could do it. I mean, you're playing football all day, you could probably handle that sugar, but in general, for the general public, you want to get some of those antioxidants without all the extra sugar as well. So acute traumatic stuff, right? We talked about low-calorie, progesterone. We talked about cold lasers. We talked about infrared red light stuff. We talked about hyperbaric oxygen therapy. On the chronic side, we talked about diet. We talked about blood sugar aberration. We talked about antioxidants, curcumin, resveratrol, acetylcholine, ginkgo, bacopa. We talked about glutathione, NAC. Of course, higher dose fish oil, wonderful. If you go higher dose, make sure there's extra antioxidants in there, maybe extra vitamin C as well. And of course, magnesium, all very anti-inflammatory. And some good brain inflammation markers to look at on an organic acid test. We'll run one called picolinate, the other one is called quinolinate. And these go up in signs of potential brain inflammation. And then we'll also look at 2-phenylacetic acid and then also 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine for extra oxidative stress. And then we may also be able to look at markers for lower glutathione via sulfate and pyroglutamate, 2-hydroxybutyric, and ortate's another good marker to look at for glutathione status. Again, this is Dr. J here. I hope you enjoyed today's content. First thing is get the diet stuff right. Don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to go and do all this crazy stuff out of the gates. And then if you want to dive in deeper, you can reach out to someone like myself or my colleagues below. We'll put a link for you if you want to reach out and schedule. I'm available for you all worldwide. Hope you enjoyed today's content. Thumbs up if you enjoy and share with family or friends. Let me see if we have any questions out of the gates. Okay, very good. Can NAFLD cause blood sugar and hormone-related issues? Not sure what that means. Female, early 40s, starting to have lots of incidences where they can't remember things, walking down aisles, forgetting what I'm looking for. Diet is low-carb, insulin's 3.5. So, the first thing is if there's a lot of brain fog, I want to look at the gut. If the diet's really good and toxins are low, I want to look at the gut. And I'd want to start looking at hormones. So if you're in your 40s, are you starting to develop a lot of perimenopausal, kind of some of those menopausal symptoms early? That's a good question. So to want to look at testing gut and hormones. Yep, so increasing fish oil, very helpful. If you want to do curcumin, liposomal curcumin is excellent. I have one called Curcumin Supreme. 80%, 90% of curcumin is not absorbed, so a good liposomal carrier is wonderful. And I have one called Curcumin Supreme that is non-soy based. It's a sunflower lecithin based. Got it. And you said, can non-alcoholic fatty liver disease cause blood sugar and hormonal issues if you... So this is kind of the thing. A lot of people, they confuse cause and effect. So non-alcoholic fatty liver is actually the cause of high blood sugar issues. Not that it would cause hormonal and blood sugar issues. The blood sugar issues will cause non-alcoholic fatty liver because your body has to dump that sugar somewhere. So where does it do it? So it's going to put it in the muscles and burn it up for fuel. Once those places are saturated, it's going to stick it in fat cells and it's going to stick it in the liver. And when that liver is fully saturated, that's where that fatty infiltration starts to happen. So yep, you got to look at all the blood sugar stuff. Any of the natural blood sugar support would help improve a non-alcoholic fatty liver. So of course, lower carb, keto, paleo is going to be wonderful, which is going to focus on anti-inflammatory, low toxin. That's going to be really important. And I would say the next thing after that is going to be things like ALA, gymnema, B vitamins, magnesium, all the really good blood sugar supporting nutrients. Someone wrote, what do you recommend for fissures of the anal tissue? So you have to get to the root cause of why you have fissures in the anal tissue. Usually there's gut inflammation. So you got to look at infections, got to look at food. So think of like anal fissures, kind of, you know, your anus, imagine like chapped lips, right? Like cracked, chapped lips. That's basically what's happening in that area. So it's very raw, very inflammatory. There's some topical things you can put on it. I have a wonderful topical cream that I'll recommend putting patients on that. You can do things like coconut oil too, but you got to get to the inflammation inside your body to help that heal. I heard a chiropractor say 50% of the population has H. pylori. Is that true? To a certain degree, yeah. It's all about the level and how high it is, right? Once it's at a positive level and there's stress and inflammation or the person's more compromised, yeah, that H. pylori needs to be knocked down for sure. There's some patients that we take their H. pylori levels, we knock them down 50, 80%, and that's usually enough to start promoting healing, especially if it's under kind of that positive threshold. What would cause frequent urination? It depends. Could be water, could be not enough minerals, and you're overhydrating, but not enough minerals. Hard to say on that. Probably not diabetes. I don't use A1C. The best marker is like a functional glucose tolerance. Get a blood sugar meter like I have here, like I have over here, and then you can complete that. You can do a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour test with the blood sugar meter. So I use my meter like this. This is my Keto Mojo. And you just prick your finger fasting, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. And that's a pretty good indication of how you're managing food, because you want to see how your blood sugar responds in response to food. If it goes up, so ideally we want it under 140 within 1 hour, ideally under 120 within an hour. Back below 120 to 100 within 2 hours, and back below 100 within 3. So you could be really high, 160, 180, and then 8-10 hours later when you get that test, it could be below 100 and it could look pretty, but you're missing this whole increase there. So blood sugar is better doing it functionally 1, 2 hour, 3 hour after a meal, because some people, their blood sugar drops nice and low, nice and low, nice and low. Then they go and get a blood test and they're getting stuck with a needle and their blood sugar goes up because of the stress of the needle. So you got to take everything into consideration. What things are the most damaging to the blood-brain toxin, blood-brain barrier? So of course things like potential aspartame, MSG, any heavy metals, any potential pesticides that are going to be in non-organic food, potential GMOs, things that affect the gut, right? GMOs, glyphosate, potential endotoxins, which are bacterial toxins, potential fungal toxins, any kind of toxin, mold toxin, a lot of times are going to be big things that affect that. How significant is exercise for keeping the brain connecting? Yeah, so exercise is really good for increasing what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, and that basically helps the synapses and the little connections of the brain spread and grow, which is how you learn and develop patterns and habits and just have better brain function. So BDNF's wonderful. That's why getting good movement in is important, not overdoing it, but very important. Can you clear gallbladder sludge? You got to get to the root cause of why your gallbladder is sludgy, because you should be eating fat at every single meal, so your gallbladder is always moving, and it shouldn't get sludgy. So if you're on a chronic low-fat diet, if you're a female with high levels of estrogen, hormonal issues, or a lot of potential food allergens, that can easily drive it. Is stevia a safe alternative to sugar? Yeah, it's okay. Just make sure that you are not taking stevia that has extra maltodextrin, which is a sugar. It kind of defeats the purpose, right? You buy stevia because it's an herb that's sugar-free, but then you go and add maltodextrin to it. Well, a lot of the companies add it. So stevia sweet leaf is a good company. You also monk fruit drops or monk drops are also good too. Is inability to sweat a sign of weak adrenals? It could be a potential sign of adrenal imbalances. It could be excessive sweating or even low sweating. Both could be. Again, it depends upon if your cortisol is excessively high or excessively low, right? So you have to know what kind of pattern you're dealing with to make the connection there. Hope it helps. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, put your comments down below. Let me know. Also, appreciate a review. If you like this, justinhealth.com/iTunes. Write me a review there. Link down below if you want to